So the mind can heal you, it can hurt you. It can help you achieve all of your goals. It can help you live long and happy. It can help you be healthier, or it can destroy all of those things. And if you're not taking care of what's going on in your subconscious mind, then that stuff is going to go on automatically. But you can take charge of it. You can get into the driver's seat of your own life, and you can become the person that you choose to be. You don't have to
Mhm.
be just a product of the environment, of your genes, of life circumstances. You can go in and look at all of these areas and make the changes.
Welcome everyone to the Spiritual Forum. I'm so glad you're here. I'm very excited about my guest today, as I always am. I just want to give a shout out to Terry for supporting the Spiritual Forum podcast. I really appreciate it. Anybody else who wants to support this podcast can do so at thespiritualforum.org. And there's just a little donate button you can scroll down for, and it always helps to just kind of help with the cost of putting out this message of hope, inspiration, and awakening. I also have a newsletter you could subscribe to on that site, and that way you will get the latest podcast interview, you will get segments from previous podcasts, you'll get my reflections on the latest podcast, and you'll get a thought for the day to take you into the week. So these are the kind of things that I put out on my weekly newsletter. So you can subscribe to that at thespiritualforum.org. Now, my guest is Ravinder Taylor, and she's an ordained interdenominational minister, and she's a researcher of self help modalities. She's co authored over 200 personal motivational audio programs and 3 books with. Have all 3 of your books been co authored with Eldon?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's what I so you've co-authored 3 books with your husband, Eldon Taylor. Now, Eldon was a guest on the Spiritual Forum podcast last November when we talked about his book, Questioning Spirituality. Ravinder's new book, Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment, provides strategies based on empirical scientific research to guide readers on how to make positive changes in their lives. And today we're going to be talking about how our minds work. We're going to be talking about why a lot of self help modalities don't always work and how we can empower ourselves. Welcome, Ravinder.
Thanks, Carol. It's an honor to be here. It's a beautiful day. Beautiful day. Let's have a beautiful conversation.
I'm all for that. It is a beautiful day. And really, really, when we decide it's a beautiful day, it is a beautiful day, right?
Create it.
Yeah, we sure do create it. So you're in Washington, I'm in Wisconsin, and we're meeting today. I listened to the podcast I did with your husband a year ago and to try to remind myself about what that whole conversation was about. It was really, really a stimulating conversation. I'm so excited to talk about how our minds work and how we can train them to work for us. So before we get into that, though, can you tell us your story, your spiritual story, what your background is, and a little bit more about you?
The spiritual story it's a journey. I think I've always been aware of some higher presence, something in my life from when I was really small. I remember being aware of it when I was 5. I've always felt as though there was a presence close by me that cared about me, would assist me in becoming a better person. It wasn't a judging presence. It would it's like the only focus it had was to help me become my highest best. So I've always felt that. Um, there have been times when the background noise is too loud that I'm not as aware of that presence. Um, but for me, that's why I have this need for quiet and silence. Because in the quiet and silence, I feel that presence a whole lot more. And that presence feeds me, I suppose. That's the best way to say it. I tend to keep my spiritual life more private. I think everyone has their own journey, so that's not something that I really share that much. I don't think I've shared this with anybody really other than my husband. Um, but yeah, it's always been there and it's always guided me. And there are certain philosophies that I have in life that come from that. As as a child, I was brought up a Sikh, and for a while I was really devout. I followed all the rules, and then one day I looked at myself and I didn't like the person I was becoming. What happens with organized religion? It's too easy to have an us and them type mentality. And when you're in a religion, you have your own particular group. And by the very nature of it, however much you try not to, you have this, well, this is better than that. I'm in the good group. Whatever. And I saw that in myself, and I decided that wasn't the path for me. So I walked away from organized religion. It was hard, in particularly at first. It was really difficult to try to be spiritual, but a religious. I found that really really challenging. But to me, the idea of God, however you want to define God, is a lot bigger than formalized religions will allow. And I wanted to have my own relationship with that. And when it comes to the spiritual path, I have this philosophy that when I'm on my deathbed, I want to look back on my life and not have regrets. So one of the questions I ask myself is, if I'm on my deathbed and I discover that everything I believed was incorrect, will I regret my life? So if you believe that, God is going to punish you and you live your life accordingly and you deny yourself luxuries or treats or whatever, and because of it, how would you feel on your deathbed about that? And so I wanted to live my life by a philosophy that regardless of whether I'm right or wrong, I'll be happy with the choices that I've made. And that to me is the real spirituality. It's finding out who I am, trying to become the best person that I can be, trying to have an impact on the world, not a big one. I'm not talking about like Princess Diana or Mother Teresa, but we have impacts on the people just around us. I want people to think of me after I'm gone with a smile on their face and appreciation for having known me. So I think that's where it really comes to. I don't have the answers, Carol. I have feelings. I have this feeling of a presence, but I don't know if that's my imagination or it's not. But I choose to live according to that because I think my life will be better for it and I'll be happy with the choices when I reach my end.
I have to say, that was very interesting. I listened to so many people's stories. Everyone has an interesting story. The way you look at those last moments is kind of unique, though. I think that's so interesting. If your beliefs were wrong, would you regret it? That's really an interesting question to ask. What if all of my beliefs are wrong and I live my whole life in accordance with those beliefs, and then I find out they were all wrong? Would I regret the way I lived my whole life? I think that's so interesting. I've heard people say, I want to not leave with regrets, but to actually look at your beliefs, I think is another level. You're leveling up there, and I think that's giving us a lot of food for thought. A lot of food for thought. So if you're right, whether you're right or you're wrong, did you live your life? Did you live a good life? I love that. I really do. I really appreciate, because I think you've contributed to me. You're giving me something to think about, and I'm sure that you're giving others something to think about as well. We get so stuck on our beliefs. And one of the things you talk about in your book is also how social we are. So, we're such social creatures. So if we're part of a religion or some sort of a sect, we can get so attached to that. And it can either empower us or it can enslave us, I think. And so you kind of saw that and then separated yourself from that and then chose your own path.
I did, and I think that is what true spirituality is about. I have this idea. I'm playing with an idea in my head, and I do this all the time. But I have this idea about what if God is what we create collectively? Are we creating God? There is this idea that God is all good, but you look out in the world and you don't necessarily see that. You see bad things happen to good people. But I think collectively, we can decide the kinds of people that we want to be. And we do that one person at a time. And to me, that is true spirituality, where you're not really thinking about God. You're just trying to be the best contribution possible and appreciating everything. Life itself is a gift. It's a gift. Every
Mhm, mhm.
moment is special. When you can live in awe, when you can remember all of that, well, that brings value to your life and to the whole life experience.
Yeah, we're here for whatever time we're here for, and how much of our time we spend here not being present and awake and aware and in awe and appreciation and all, just kind of like we're like Walking Dead, and yet we have every moment's an opportunity to really, really be alive and embrace it and be present. I like your definition of spirituality. This podcast, I think it's called the Spiritual Forum, but, unfortunately, a lot of people think spirituality is, angels and crystals and the paranormal and near-death experiences, and I love near-death experiences, and I love all of that, but it's like stuff it's other people's stories, it's stuff outside of us, and to me, the spirituality is about living your life and moving through the challenges and celebrating the joys and just being as fully alive as you can and finding that authentic nature within us, that's what spirituality is about.
I agree. Today, my life philosophy can basically be summed up by live consciously, choose wisely, love passionately. Now, living consciously is, the basis of the work that we do at Progressive Awareness. That is the work of mind training. You can't be yourself until you know who you're not. When you're pushed around by society, when ideas are foisted upon you, when you just absorb everything that's going on, well, who are you? Values, what is good and what isn't good. I would like to be able to choose for myself what I believe is good. There was a time black slavery was the norm, and there were lots of people
Mhm,
who
mhm.
would have thought that they were good people. I want to look at
Right.
life today with the lens of, if I went back to that time, would I have the courage to stand up and say, no, it's wrong? Would I have the ability to see that it was wrong when society shows me that? So when I'm looking at life today, it's like, what's going on out there? What collective belief is there out there? Is that really the right way to go? I want to just open myself up to that. And as I said, our mind training book delves deeply into discovering who you really are. And then when it goes to choose wisely, wisdom is not always important to be right. There are times that, maybe you have to compromise a little bit for the highest best for everybody. And that's where wisdom comes into play. You don't always have to foist your ideas on someone else. If you believe that you're wrong and that you're right and somebody else is wrong, doesn't mean you have to jam it down their throats. I think you can teach a lot more by example. So choosing wisely what it is you want to do and then live passionately. I'm not talking about intimate love at all. That's a part of it, but to live passionately is to enjoy the entire experience, to appreciate your own talents and to maximize them. So if you like to sing, go sing at the top of your voice. If you like to dance, go dance. If having a family is the most important thing in your life. Well, work to be the best parent that you can be, work to be the best friend that you can be. Um, Live passionately, love passionately, uh, the entire experience.
Those are 3 great, great tenets. I love that. I sign off my own newsletter. How do I do it? Live fearlessly, trust radically, and love
There you
outrageously.
go.
So
We're in alignment, Carol.
I have to admit, though, I'm not always living that way.
It's a challenge. That's what life is. You have to be able to forgive yourself and constantly strive to do better. We all make mistakes. That's one of the beauties, I think, of growing older is that you can look back. I think that all those judgments begin to go away. They dissipate because you realize we've all made mistakes. We could all
Right.
go back and do things differently. We've all had different challenges. So if you can get older and release judgments, really, just have a great deal more acceptance, you have a whole great deal more peace. And we just continue every day striving to be better, to learn more, to tune into what the universe wants for us. What one of the things my husband always says in a prayer when he is praying for something specifically, he always says, "This or whatever is best for the highest
Yes.
best for everybody." Because we don't have
Yes.
all the information. We don't know what's going on. So I always want to leave room there for if the choices I'm making are incorrect, then show me the right choices. I'm open to it. And the more open you are to these things, the more answers do come to you.
Yeah, I completely agree. This or something better. I we can have an idea in our mind specifically what we want, but how do we know? How do we know? How do we know? I remember that when we'll get into your book in a second, but I remember my daughter had a wedding here on our property in October of 2019, and I had one prayer for an entire year, and that was to have a beautiful sunny day, no rain. And of course, it rained. I officiate hundreds of weddings and it hardly ever rains, but the one wedding that mattered so much to me, it rained. And I just had to release that. It's like, it's not the prayer doesn't work. It's like, how do I know that somebody else doesn't really need rain
Yes.
on the same day?
Yes. Absolutely.
So anyway, I think we're really aligned on a lot of things. Let's dig into how do our minds work because I think we're very blind to how our minds work, and so they kind of run us. I think in a way, and your book is all about training your mind so that you can empower yourself. But first, you go through a lot about how does it work. I think the idea is to help us see what we possibly can't see about the workings of our mind. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. I think lots of people think they are just who they are. They don't have any control over it. It's just genetics. That's just the way it is. My training shows you no, that's not the case at all. When you learn how your subconscious mind intakes information, when you understand why it prioritizes certain things over the others, then you have the ability to get into the driver's seat of your own life and to make changes. So my training is basically, the art of tweaking formerly subconscious processes. And in the process, that can help you eliminate self-destructive behaviors, can enhance health and vitality, and it can supercharge success. So think about if you could just be 10, 20, 30% better in whatever areas you're looking at. I'm not talking just about careers. No, it's in your relationships, it's in your health. If you could just be that much better, wouldn't you take that? Then that's exactly what mind training is all about. We have so much more control, but we have to take it. The idea of free will isn't free. You have to take it. And there are lots of people who live on automatic. They're just totally on automatic pilot. Some people aren't open to hearing this information. They're not open to looking at anything differently. And that's where the wisdom part comes in, because I don't bother trying to change their minds. I want to teach people who want to grow. If you want to grow, mind training definitely has the tools. If you want to be healthier, there are tools in mind training to do that. But it comes to paying attention to how your subconscious mind is controlled. There is so much that your subconscious controls. So if you don't take charge of how it's programmed, then life itself is going to do that. There's a common meme out there that goes along the lines of, within minutes of being born, you're given a name, a culture, a country, a sect, and you spend the rest of your life trying to defend it. Um, there are so many ideas, even when you look at like the placebo response, even that gets influenced by enculturation. It's a fascinating process, but when you look at it, you have the ability to change it. So when you see how your subconscious mind is programmed, if you've got self-destructive behaviors, well, then you gain the ability to go in and look and see what what what's what triggers that? Where does that come from? And when you uncover this information, those problems can frequently just go.
So our subconscious minds, so that is all the automatic responses. I mean, I think that's all of the tapes that tell us if we're good enough or strong enough and or if we're pretty or whatever it is. It's also all of our enculturation, it's also all of the habits that we've taken on and are the beliefs, I think, like, of our family and of our community. What else is in the subconscious mind? Because I don't think many people are really aware of it. I mean, a lot of us who understand psychology are, but I think that's that automatic thing that people don't understand. People don't see that we're all on automatic. People overall think they have more agency, like they're thinking when really we're not thinking. Something is like thinking us.
It is. And, there's been a great deal of scientific research done in this area that shows there's activity in the subconscious mind before you make a choice. So there was a work in the 80s done by Benjamin Libet. He basically had people choose whether they're going to press a button with the right hand or left hand. Um, and he saw that there was activity in the subconscious mind before the active choice. Um, John Dylan Haynes did the same thing in 2007 using fMRI, and Isaac Reed furthered that research. All the time you see that answers are given to us by the subconscious mind, and there's lots of other information out there. If you've read Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, you're aware that a great deal of what we do is on instinct, and we need instinct. We need some
Mhm.
of those automatic behaviors. There's evolutionary advantages to that. So if you hear something moving in the grass, you're not going to stop and say, was that the grass? Was that the wind? Was that? No, you're going to react because it could be a snake. And if you don't react quickly, you could die. So a great deal of the automatic thinking is really, really important, but it can take over. It can rely on information that is old. There is a bias that we have towards negative information. One of the things John Gottman at University of Washington discovered was he was able to predict the health of a couple's relationship based on how they spoke to each other. And what he learned was it's not if someone says something that isn't very positive, it's not just a single positive that will cancel it out. It actually takes five positives to cancel out each negative. Um, so yeah, if your partner, if you do something wrong to your partner, you can't just apologize. There has to be at least five acts. There has to, and that is to do with negativity bias because instinctively we are programmed to protect, to protect against being hurt, to protect against being embarrassed. And therein lies some
Mhm.
of the self-destructive patterns. So if something happened to you as a child and your subconscious mind creates a strategy to make sure you don't ever get embarrassed in that way again, well, as an adult, maybe the same information doesn't hold. So you have old information going on in there. When you learn how the information gets in, you have the ability to look back at your life, look at the different areas of your life and say, "Oh, I think that's where it is." And the more you question your subconscious mind, Carol, the more it will bring up the answers. The more you understand that the answers are there and they are retrievable. Just that belief, the more you question, the more it will give you the answers. It takes some practice, but for me, it happens faster and faster.
Yeah, and you talk about, I think this comes from you, but biases, defense mechanisms, shortcuts, compliance principles, that if we can learn to identify those and look for our own patterns, then that's kind of what gives us leverage, I think, to make some changes in the subconscious. Is that am I looking at that right?
Kind of. There is a great deal of stuff that we do on automatic, and there are researchers out there trying to find the ways to press those automatic buttons. So the the proof, one of the things that I look at frequently is to do with, being part of the group. There are lots of commercials out there where you will see a person hears about this product, this special product, and they go chasing after it, and then someone else sees them chasing after it, so they chase after it too. And before you realize it, there's a whole flood of people going after this product. That is a tactic. We
Mhm.
are herd animals. If we can't be special, we at least want to be normal. But sometimes we gain our special by having the product, the item, whatever it is, that will help us stand out and compete in the herd. So having an awareness of all of these biases, being aware that there's a great deal of research done in these areas, it extends into politics. President Obama had his dream team of social psychologists. So they actually figured out the correct wording that's going to get someone to act automatically. President Trump had Cambridge Analytica to do the same thing. And there are small things. So just give you a couple of small examples of where this information can come from. They discovered that if you're in a restaurant and your server is wearing red, that you will leave bigger tips. It's just
Oh,
so
wow.
if you're a restaurant worker, then wear red and your tips will increase. It's not that everyone's gonna do it, but it's that percentage increase that goes up. They looked at judges doing parole hearings, and they discovered that the judges were more lenient at the beginning of the day and after lunch. As they get further away from food, the harsher their judgments can become. Being first is really important. If you're applying for a job and your application is at the top of the pile, it will get greater consideration than if it's further down in the pile. So
Uh-huh.
there are lots of these things. There's the defense mechanisms, compliance principles, the consistency, reciprocity. All of these things can cause us to act automatically. That part of the book, to me, is probably the heaviest part of the book because it goes through all of these different areas. But the important thing to realize is that you don't have to have a deep understanding of all of them. You just have to be aware that they exist. So, just to give you an example from my own life, I was about 16, and my brother had been to see The Exorcist in the theater. but I was too young to go, and then it came out on tape. So he brought it home and he wanted to watch it with me because he knew I would be scared out of my mind and he was going to have a great laugh looking at me being scared. Now I knew that was what he wanted to do. That was the effect that he wanted. So I put my analytical cap on. I'm aware of that there are different techniques they use in videography for these different effects. I'm aware they use careful makeup and everything. I don't understand the details of it. I don't know anything about videography and special effects, but just being aware that that was there was enough for me to take a step backwards and then engage the more conscious thinking, the system two thinking that Kahneman talks about. I could look at it. My brother was really disappointed that I wasn't afraid of this. But when you look at everything out there, when you look at commercials, when you look at politicians, when you look at anyone trying to sell something to you, it can also, these things aren't always other people trying to brainwash you. Some things just happen automatically. So maybe Uncle Fred is just really good at sales and he can always get you to buy tickets for his daughter that his daughter's trying to sell to raise money for the school or all of those kind. Some people just do these things naturally. But when you're aware of how automatically you can behave, how you can be triggered to react in a certain way. You just take a step back and that gives you that moment of pause that you can think about it. And then perhaps you can choose what's in your best interest, not what you feel you need to do in order to be consistent. If it's Uncle Fred's daughter and you're really close, well, you want to be consistent and support whatever she's doing, but that doesn't mean you have to fork out money to buy a bunch of tickets that you're not interested in. Just be aware of the tactic. You can be consistent in other ways.
So I do think it's really important for us all to learn about the biases and the defense mechanisms and compliance principles. I think what you're saying is so you can see that and then maybe we shift into more of an observer mode when we're beginning to sense that these things are happening and just stepping back that little bit amount gives us
That's correct.
agency,
That's correct.
agency to choose.
So if someone
Yeah.
is talking to you, you don't if they're trying to get you to buy something or conform to something, you don't have to say now, am I responding out of consistency? Is it the authority figure? Is it reciprocity? Is it social? You don't have to go through that list. You just have to be aware that in all communications, these things happen that can pull on you. So you just stop briefly and think about what is it that I want? What is it that I want? I
Yeah.
don't have to be pushed into doing something just because I think I'll be embarrassed because I haven't been consistent.
Yeah, and I think that you mentioned politics. All of politics, advertising, what's on TV, media, we're constantly being barraged with enticing information or something that's trying to convince us of something, to play on our emotions, to draw us in a certain direction. And I think we fall for that just over and over and over again. And it may or may not be in our best interest. It may or may not be in the collective's best interest. And so if we can start seeing that this is happening to us, this product placement or this particular statement that this politician says, or because don't you think it's like everywhere?
It is. It's impossible to avoid. There are lots of people that say, "Oh, I just turn off the TV, so I'm immune to that." You may have turned off the TV, but your best friend who you meet for lunch has been watching TV and she's bringing those ideas to you, so you're still part of it. And you see it everywhere. There are ads
Yes.
everywhere, and as you say, it's not just in commercials. There can be product placement. There can just be ideas that are
Yeah,
put.
messaging in films.
Absolutely. They're constantly trying to push stories that they believe in. And then when it's done in a good emotional story, that gets you going, that gets you sympathetic to a cause. So yeah, the, these ideas do come from everywhere. They are impossible to avoid, but being aware that we act on automatic in these ways just gives us that moment of pause to think again. And then we also need to focus on all the other areas where we can create real positive changes in our lives and the lives of those people that we care about. So when you're aware of all of the other techniques, the compliance principles, that aspect, that's just one small aspect of mind training.
Before we go into, because I do wanna pivot into empowerment and how what we can do. Can you talk about compliance principles? Because I don't know that that is a term that most people who are listening might understand.
Compliant is they are techniques that get you to comply with somebody else's wishes. So when I talked about social proof, that is a compliance principle. If everyone else has XYZ product, then you have to have it as well. So that will get you to
Okay,
comply when it comes to politics or different planks in a politician's platform, how
okay,
they get
okay,
you to comply. This really came, into stark awareness for us during COVID. There was research, I think it was out of Stanford University, where they did a great deal of research to try to discover the correct way to persuade people to get the COVID vaccine. So what type of messaging is gonna be the most effective? Is it you'll get the vaccine because that's gonna help your grandmother or your friend's grandmother from not getting COVID because it would be so much worse for her? Are you gonna get the vaccine because your child is afraid of it? Or, are you gonna get the vaccine because of your own health? How can we frighten you about the consequences of COVID to get you to get the vaccine? There was
they
research
did that.
done that they
I
actually
believe it.
looked to
Yeah,
see the correct messaging, how to phrase everything to get the maximum number
yes.
of people to do it. And when you look at something like COVID, perhaps you can say, well, yeah, maybe that was important, maybe it wasn't. It depends where you're going. But when you look at the depth of that research and you look at everything else that they try to sell you, then it becomes a whole lot more scary. And so, yeah, if you're not aware that this stuff is going on, it's going to have an influence on you regardless.
Yeah, that was all really interesting because there was a segment of the population that didn't buy into any of it, and it's interesting that they spent a lot of research in trying to convince people of that. When another part of your book, you talk about how our mind, if I'm if I remember this correctly, that we can even like cause ourselves to become sick. Like we can have so much information come at us that would convince us that we're sick. And and I think that happened too. I think that happened too. We're reminded over and over again. But anyway, back to that vaccine research. It's interesting that they did that. That doesn't surprise me. And yet there were people who just decided none of that coercion or whatever they felt they're just not it's just not going to work on them. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, it can just be a different rabbit hole that someone goes down though. So yeah, they had all of this work in how to get you to have the COVID vaccine, but there was a great deal of information online that said that no, it was all a hoax, it was all this, it was all that. And algorithms today, we've all heard of the algorithms that Facebook and Twitter would use. They will push information on you based on what's going to get the maximum reaction from you. They don't care which way you go. They just care about how much advertising they
Clicks.
can sell, how many eyeballs they can get on something. So they
Right.
continue pushing it. So you have to be open to looking at the other side of it, the other side of things. So country is so divided right now. It's not just whether you get the
Right.
COVID vaccine or you don't, but the arguments between Republicans and Democrats, and people just hammer in. And there's been, lots of these other surveys done where they have the person on the street and they say, this conservative said, "What do you think?" And the Democratic uh, person there will say, "Oh no, that's awful," only to discover that the quote they used came from a Democrat.
Oh,
You
right.
know, you
Right,
see
right,
this
right.
stuff, so much, people will defend it blindly,
Yes,
and we all have to stop doing that. There isn't any
yes.
side that is right. We need to be open to listening to the other side. When you listen to the other side, you'll discover the majority of people just want the best for everyone. They've just got different ideas on how to achieve that. And different people have different concerns. They have different priorities. And you can't call someone a redneck, doesn't know anything, old fashioned, wants to go back, or snowflake. There's all of this languaging that goes out there, and I think that does so much more harm than anything else. That just divides us up, and what we're seeing is, people just get divided up more and more and more. So, no, being able to talk to people on the other side and listening to their concerns, when you address their concerns, then you're in a much better position to explain your concerns to them, and that way we can bring people back together. Families are being destroyed over this, Carol. There's lots
Mhm,
of, I'm
mhm,
hearing
mhm.
about husbands and wives getting divorced over it, children not speaking to their parents, parents not speak. It's awful, and it's being done to us. It is being done to us by people who just want eyeballs and clicks, and yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, it's that's so interesting. I think I say this all the time in the podcast. I think this is the most important thing that we can do is to stay connected, to reach out and try to understand each other. There are some forces out there that are trying to divide us for their own purposes, and I think the point you make that the social media doesn't care what side you're on as long as they're getting the clicks and the advertisement. And I think there's something about the political division that's the same thing. It's like, who cares what side you're on? As long as we're all arguing, there's some benefit for somebody that we're all arguing and divided. When if we could just spend our time doing training our mind and remembering who we are. I believe we're all divine beings, that we are, I would say image and likeness of God. Where it doesn't matter if that's even the right term, but that our authentic selves are all about love and life and connection. And we all want to live freely and be able to express ourselves. And I think at the deepest level, we want that for others. And that we have so much more in common, so much more in common. And yet it's our subconscious that's kind of like running these tapes or responding to these differences, and then it like has us, and now we're in the program that we're a Democrat or we're a Republican or we're a this or we're a that, when really we're just a person trying to live.
It is indeed. And then you have to look at, the other part of it. All of this stuff is designed to get you angry, and being angry, well, that's not good for you. You've got the hormones going through your body full of stress. Your body, goes into fight flight mode. Your body can't grow. Your immune system can shut down. Whereas conversely, when you are relaxed, when you're feeling more optimistic, when you're full of gratitude and awe, your body will thrive. In fact, there was one particular study I looked at. They were looking at optimism. People who are optimistic. And once again, you're back to, some people think that's just who I am. I'm an optimistic person. I'm a pessimistic person. But both of these things can be cultivated. And in one particular study I looked at, there was some really interesting statistics in there because it showed that the most optimistic women could have a 16% lower chance of dying from cancer, 38% lower
Mm,
chance of dying from heart disease, 39% lower risk of dying from stroke, 52% lower risk of dying from infection. I mean, these are pretty
wow.
startling numbers that we have. And there's lots of other research in mind training that, looks at all of these things. So, how do you cultivate those things that are going to serve you? Those personality characteristics that are going to serve you, that are going to help you live longer, live happy. I mean, when it comes to optimism, more optimistic people are going to be more financially successful. They're going to have better relationships. They're going to live longer. So there are actually techniques in mind training that will show you how to do all of these things, to how to program your own subconscious mind so that it serves you rather than hurts you. The placebo effect is a great place to look at when you're looking at the power of the mind and what it can do. They've looked at, the placebo effect, and if it's a capsule rather than a pill, it's more effective. If depending on the color of the capsule, it's going to be more effective. If it's an injection, even more. If it's a surgery, even more. But there's a great example in there about enculturation as well. See if I remember this the correct way around. When it comes to hypertension, the placebo effect in Germany is particularly low. But when it comes to gastric ulcers, the placebo effect in Venezuela, no, in Brazil, sorry, in Brazil is really low, but in Germany, it's really high. And it's like, of all the things, of all the kinds of areas that you can look at for there to be this kind of difference, that just really highlights how much we take on board and how that's gonna influence your health, your actual health. The placebo effect is a wonderful example of how the mind can heal you or hurt you. There was this other research study they did where they were looking at people with asthma, and when they administered, different meds to them, if they told them it was a bronchodilator, but it was really a bronchoconstrictor, they would still breathe better. So under the harshest conditions, these asthmatics would breathe better because they were told it was a bronchodilator, and vice versa. So the mind can heal you, it can hurt you. It can help you achieve all of your goals. It can help you live long and happy. It can help you be healthier, or it can destroy all of those things. And if you're not taking care of what's going on in your subconscious mind, then that stuff is going to go on automatically. But you can take charge of it. You can get into the driver's seat of your own life, and you can become the person that you choose to be. You don't have to
Mhm.
be just a product of the environment, of your genes, of life circumstances. You can go in and look at all of these areas and make the changes.
Yeah, we have a lot of power, and I think that's what you're really talking about. Let's talk about that, though. Let's talk about what can we do, and how come sometimes like in unity, one of our tenets is that, we have great power in our mind, and our thoughts and beliefs really create our experience of reality, which I believe is true. We also have a practice of affirmations, but my experience is sometimes affirmations work. The idea is that affirmations are to reprogram the subconscious, but sometimes I think they're just words and they don't really work. So what is it that people can start doing, and why sometimes these modalities work, why sometimes they don't? And what are some of the things that you have that do help us retrain our subconscious mind?
When it comes to affirmations, the reason why affirmations often don't work is because you've already got these beliefs in your subconscious mind that are going to argue back. So you have an affirmation that says, I am good. and that little voice inside you says, "Well, I'm not as good as I could be. I could have done better here. I was kind of mean there." You know, there are all those places that we get embarrassed about. And back to the negativity bias, those ideas are just a whole lot more powerful. And so your subconscious mind throughout your entire life has taken in all of your beliefs, but the negative beliefs are the ones that are gonna stick the most. One of the things we do at Progressive Awareness, we have our patented inner talk subliminal technology. And subliminal is really misunderstood. I go through that whole story as well in mind training. There is a great deal of confusion about that. Lots of people say that it doesn't work. It is being used in the media and there are laws to control it, and it's dangerous. Actually, I should have said lots of people say that it doesn't work, but it is being used in all of these places and it's dangerous. But if it doesn't work, how can it be dangerous? If it
Right.
doesn't work,
Right.
why is it still being used everywhere? The story about the confusion is pretty detailed. It's a really interesting story, but just to give you a quick example out of there, today with the amount of misinformation that goes on, we are often going to do fact checking. So if you fact check subliminal with Snopes, you will hear that
Mhm.
there was this experiment in Fort Lee where they had the eat popcorn, drink Coca-Cola experiment. But they tried to replicate that, and the president of the Psychological Association, Linky, did a replication and it failed. But this gentleman died 5 years before this particular experiment. So he could not have replicated it. He could not have proved it. And this
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
on one of the fact checking sites. So
Mhm. Mhm.
so that
Mhm.
and then this information gets repeated. I've looked at lots of academic papers where they repeat this information
Mhm. Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it's incorrect. And you can check that for yourself. You can check and see when he died, and you'll see
Yeah.
exactly that instance. So we do take in information, just like we saw with the placebo information and the hypertension placebo effect in Germany. We take in information subconsciously. So it is going on anyway. So a great way to tackle that head on, I think, comes down to our inner talk subliminal programs. We have titles for everything. I use them all the time, Carol. I used to be petrified of public speaking. Even before this interview, I am a communicator. So that, it's like,
Oh,
I enjoy speaking, I enjoy sharing, it's all good. But it goes in automatically. When it goes in subconsciously like that, you don't argue against it as you would
okay.
with positive affirmations. You don't argue. It just becomes part of your own stream of thought. And if you're thinking, I'm happy, I'm relaxed, or it's all good, you can't be depressed at the same time. But bringing it back to the other points that you made about the teachings at Unity Church, the mind is really powerful. And the law of attraction became really popular for a while. And I think that has been oversimplified. You know, is
Mhm.
what you expect is what you get. What is not necessarily exactly what you get, but you're gonna see more of it. And that has psychological basis behind it. When you focus on something, you're gonna see it a whole lot more. But with The Secret, they talked about ask, believe, receive. I would change that to you don't ask, you choose. And choosing is a whole lot more complicated than you think, because you have to look at all the other aspects of that choice. So, for example, there's a survival show that my husband likes to watch where you get these two people, generally a man and a woman, who are dumped off in a jungle or somewhere, and they are starkers. They don't have any clothes on whatsoever, and they have to survive. And what can find amusing is that I have seen instances where the guy is this big butch bodybuilder type. And the girl is just this small, petite. girl, you know? So, and frequently it's gonna be the big guy who taps out. Now he has this
Ah.
choice. He wants to do the survival challenge, so he makes a choice because it's gonna be macho. He's gonna prove to himself what a man or how capable he is or all of those things. But he's a bodybuilder. He's dedicated his life to building Body Beautiful. He's going to eat X number of calories every day. He's going to eat the correct kinds of foods, the right fats, the right protein, that all of this stuff. He's going to exercise. He's going to drink lots of water. Now he's in an environment where he can't do any of that. So he has to choose. Is he going to choose to do the survival, or is he gonna choose to preserve all the work he has done to build his body up
Mm.
to the point he has? That's one example, but that underlies everything. So when it comes to ask, believe, receive, first of all, you have to choose. And then believe, yeah, mind training is all about belief at a much deeper level. You have the Pygmalion effect, how you influence other people, but you have to believe. You have to really believe that that other person is capable of great things. You can't pretend. So the belief has to be on this deep subconscious level. So once again, you have to take care of how your subconscious mind is programmed, and you have to get rid of those beliefs that don't suit you. And then the receive aspect of it, what can happen frequently with the law of attraction is people say that I did all of this stuff and it didn't work, and they get told you didn't do it right. You didn't do it
Mhm,
enough.
mhm, mhm,
You didn't believe enough. You didn't ask it the
mhm.
right way. You have to release it, and then you have to allow time. And what happens is the person trying these techniques feels deficient, like they have failed, and they haven't failed. The universe isn't a cornucopia of abundance out there. Look out at nature. It's a world of balance. It's a world of balance. To increase luck and prosperity in your life, you have to be open to seeing it. If you believe that you're an unlucky person, then when good things come your way, you're not going to see it. When it comes to prosperity, if you've got these deep beliefs that you don't deserve prosperity, or that you're not any good at with money, um, or you're not capable in all of these other areas, then you're going to push prosperity away. So yeah, the mind is really powerful, but you have to access it in the right way. And it does a disservice to people when you tell them just go away and believe.
Right, right, and if you don't get the result, you didn't do it right. Attraction shaming.
Yeah. I've not heard that term, but exactly. That does go on. I've heard people talk about it, they're just told that they didn't do it right, so they weren't.
Oh, I've seen that a lot. Yep.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
painful to see. It's like, no.
You gotta believe harder.
Yeah, and really, the people who really make lots of money from the law of attraction are the people who teach it.
Yeah,
They teach it
yeah,
because people are hungry
yeah.
for easy answers, and there are easy answers out there. That's the fascinating part in with mind training is lots of the techniques that I put forward in there, they're really simple. They're really easy to implement. They can be things that we've heard about before, things that we've dismissed because we don't think that they're powerful enough. And the self-empowerment part, I'm a big believer in empowering the reader. I want to give them all the tools, all the evidence that shows, hey, you probably dismissed this idea because mom told you, and what does mom know? But no, there is so much in there that you can do that is really easy and that can extend your life. Something as simple as smiling. People who smile
Uh-huh.
will live longer. They actually looked at there's 2 papers that I looked at. One looked at baseball cards, one looked at high school pictures, and what they found was if people were smiling in those pictures, they would live longer. If they had a small smile, they would live on average 2 years longer. If they had the big Duchenne smile, the smile that reaches all the way up to your eyes, crinkles up your eyes, they had the big Duchenne smile, they can live 7 years longer. So living longer,
Wow.
living happier can change just by something really simple. So these techniques aren't difficult, but you have to really believe that the techniques are going to work in order to implement them. Otherwise, it's just your mom telling you same old, and you're going to ignore it. But when you have all the evidence, and so I do cite a great deal of science for every idea that I put forward in mind training. I want you fully empowered, not only to be able to implement them, but to tweak the different processes so that it suits your own particular way of life, suits your fits your own beliefs so that you can really personalize the process and make it your own.
Yeah, okay. I that you've said a lot here. I wanna reflect on a few things. One is my own father, who he lived till 96. He was a big smiler. He was always smiling, even even when in his last years, he had a broken off teeth in his front, so he just and and he was also kind of I don't know. To me, his nature would have been that that's not attractive, so I shouldn't show it, but he did not. He kept smiling no matter if he had those gaps in his teeth or not. And I remember him being in the care center, even the last few weeks of his life, people always talked about how he smiled and he wanted to talk to people. And I do think that kept him alive. My mom died first and he lasted like another 8 or 9 years or so. And I think that was part of it. I really see that smile that it and I know that's just one of many, but I think I can
But it's on
testify to
average,
that.
it's not like everybody is going to
Yeah.
live 7 years, to the minute longer. It's not like that at all. They're looking generally, so there's gonna be people who live a whole lot longer than that, people who don't. But it's all about improving your life by X%, doing that much
Yes.
better, you look
Yes.
at every area of your life. If you can live healthier, if you can live happier, if you can be more prosperous, just a bit more prosperous. I'm not promising you, a cornucopia of abundance out there. I'm saying that this will put you on a different track for your life, a track that will help you become your more authentic self, will enhance your spirituality, will empower you to become to become the best version of you. I think that's the ultimate goal for spirituality, is to become the best version of yourself.
I completely agree. I think that's a really great closing note, but I don't want to lose the subliminal audio programs because you have created a lot of these, right? These subliminal audio programs that people can
Uh,
get if they want to, or is it a certain program that they become a part of?
there are lots of programs. We have about 500 different titles. You can look up Inner Talk. You can go there. You can go to my own website. I'll have links in there as well. It's a patented technology. It's been researched by numerous
Uh-huh.
independent universities and been demonstrated effective. But bringing it back to the optimism as part of our book launch for mind training, we are also giving away free of charge the Optimism Plus program when you purchase a copy of the book. You can find all the information for
Oh,
that at my website. But the
okay.
value of that free gift is more than the price of the book. And there are all of these other benefits that you can get. But when you read mind training, you'll understand why you want to play the program as much. It used to be what the program that I would play every morning. It's just a great way to keep your positivity all tuned up, and it's going to have ripple effects across your entire life.
I love that. I love that. So is your book out now or
Yes,
is it
it is out now. You can go to the main stores, Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, any bookstore can order the book in if they don't already have it in stock. But to take part of our book launch special offers, we've got lots of other additional bonus gifts in there. So if you go to ravindertaylor.com, you'll find the links there, and you'll see there how to get your free copy of Optimism Plus as well.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Now, I wanna give you the last word, but before I do that, there's one other thing I wanted to say comment on. When you mentioned Snopes, that was way back in our conversation, but I think the fact checkers also are programs out there. They make a lot of errors, and I think they want us to believe a lot of certain things, and I it's you have a really good example of how Snopes is not true, but we cannot take what the fact checkers say as absolute truth. We've got to go look further than that. They have reasons for us to want us to believe a certain thing. And like, for example, I'll see something going on out there where people are out there making personal testimonies about something, and maybe it's politically sensitive. So suddenly the next day, Snopes says it's false and everything's taken down. It's like, wait a minute, 10 people were just speaking about that. Where did that go? So there's something controlling there about Snopes and fact checkers too, I think.
Fact checkers, absolutely. They're going to focus on fact checking the stuff that suits their agenda. So, and that's what
Yeah,
you're going to see a whole lot more about. They don't go look at the other areas that don't fit their agenda. So it takes a great deal of discernment to figure this stuff out. Just
absolutely.
just be aware that they're all trying to program you. You know, become a
Exactly.
bit paranoid about it, and then take it with a pinch of salt. Take a Take it with a pinch of salt, and then think for yourself what makes the most sense. Start analyzing the information for yourself. You are smarter, you are more capable than you think. Don't turn your power over to the authority figure, um, because they're frequently talking outside their own areas of expertise.
Or they're financially
Yep,
incentivized in a certain way.
yep, that they are.
Yeah. Yep, they sure are. So, we've definitely gone over an hour, but I wanna make sure, is there anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to speak about?
I don't think so. Mind training is the capstone of the work Eldon and I have done for the last 30 years. It really synthesizes all the information. I would say that, if any of your listeners get the book, I would be interested in your feedback. I would like to know. I have learned constantly from talking to people over the last 30 years. I've spoken to thousands of people as they've tried to improve their lives. So I'd be interested to see, for those people who read mind training, which parts appeal to them the most? Which did they find the most challenging? The journey continues, and I'd like to be part of your journey too.
Well, I'll give you my feedback.
Mhm.
I love the book, but I could not make it through the animal testing part. I read the rat story and I couldn't finish it. I was so sickened by that. It's not your work, but it was so hard for me to accept that human beings could be that cruel to
I
animals for a
agree.
psychological answer.
I'm an
Yeah, I
animal
could not
rights
make it through
activist.
that.
I'm a vegan. I will not participate in any of that stuff anymore. So I totally hear you, and I kept putting
Yeah,
in those disclaimers.
you did.
Uh,
You did. You did. It's not a critique. It's not a critique, but it is feedback. For me, did not know you were vegan. I do think that veganism is the next moral frontier or animals. We had talked about slavery and can we go back in time and be one who could see that? I think right now animal slavery is happening, but most people can't see it. And that's kind of the next moral frontier. But now I'm going way off your topic. Perhaps we can come on and talk about that some other
I'd
time.
like that, Carol. Anytime.
I would too. Thank you so much, Ravinder, for your book, for sharing yourself, your life. I think you have so many interesting ideas that are new and unique, and I can just tell your spirit really does want to empower people.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I now close the spiritual forum.